Welcome to Happily Holistic. I'm Amy Lee Mccree, and I'm a medical intuitive with 20 years of experience. I've written 15 books on health and wellness. If you've had a medical intuitive session with me, you know that the thoughts and emotions within you, what has been passed down from your ancestors, and everything that surrounds you can impact your well-being. In this podcast, we touch on my favorite ways for you to improve your health and feel more joy. We dive deeply into everything health and wellness with a big dash of spirituality and a sprinkle of business. We spotlight the uplifting and the positive and share the secret ways top wellness authors and celebrities get inspired, stay healthy, and enjoy this beautiful life. I can't wait to get happily holistic with you today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Happily Holistic. I'm so excited to have Rebecca Campbell with us today. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey, Amy. Hi, everyone.
Rebecca is so awesome, and I'm really excited to get to meet her. She's a soul sister already, I can tell. And she is an amazing author who has 3 best-selling books translated into 18 languages. Her first book was Light is the New Black, which by the way, when that came out, I thought, boy, we really need someone to buy this thing for a movie. Just that, wouldn't that be a cool movie title?
Oh, yeah.
I think we should manifest that. Rise, Sister, Rise was her second book. And then Letters to a Starseed is her newest book, which we're going to talk about. You can see it if you're watching us on YouTube, although it's very shiny and my light is really reflecting.
Matches your top beautifully.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
And your globe.
It does. We're coordinated, unwittingly coordinated. Rebecca's a writer, a devotional artist, a poet, a mystic, and a mother who leads activating workshops internationally, giving people an experience of their soul. She's the creator of the Rise, Sister, Rise membership, which I'm sure is amazing. She also has some oracle decks, which I love oracle decks. I need to check those out. And her work is connected to ancient lineages. She studied and trained in and including Mother God, Bhakti Yoga, shamanism, and the priestess paths, including Avalonian and Magdalenes. That's another topic we could talk about. Ooh. By the way. Along with the Rise, Sister, Rise membership, she has online courses to work your light and discover your cosmic blueprint. Boy, we have a lot of similarities now that I'm reading this through again. I knew this, but it's just reminding me. Rebecca also teaches a program, 3 Steps to Living a Soul-Led Life. Is that one of your programs? Mm-hmm. I love that. So all of her creations encourage people all over the world to spend more time with their soul and connect with their own inner temple. And her work is activating and initiatory. And here we are to activate and initiate in some way on Happily Holistic. Welcome, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you. I'm very intrigued and looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. And I'm so happy to have this time together and to have our audience getting to listen and hear whatever we decide to discuss in our flow today. Mm-hmm. So I think a really great place to start would be to rewind us to how you got started on your medicine path or your spiritual path and see where that takes us.
Yeah, so I think I grew up in Australia in a not very spiritual family.
Yeah.
Like I learned about prayer and some things like that and was always connected to nature, but it wasn't like part of what I grew up with. Yeah. And I didn't really have the words for it, but I always was intrigued to that unseen world, like so many of us are when we were younger.
Right.
And like my favorite thing to do would be like when we'd go on road trips, like beach trips growing up.
Yeah.
And when, you know, when you're traveling and you kind of go into that altered space when you see the world pass.
Yes.
And I look back now and I'm like, oh, I could see like that was me kind of tapping into that altered space.
Yes.
So I always had that.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until like early teens where I began kind of making connection with a couple of people who were similar-ish age to me who had passed and were kind of connected to their mothers.
Yes.
I never went down a medium path, but that was kind
Right.
of like a gateway for me.
Absolutely.
And then those relationships, I was always just so intrigued about, like the first book I bought when I was young, I can't believe this, it sounds so morbid, was Kubler-Ross, her book on grief and dying. So I was
Yes.
fascinated by the other world, what happens when we
Right.
die, and you know, it to me it just seemed like the most normal thing in the world because we're all going to die. And so I'd always been
Right.
a bit of an intense, deep thinker, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, but on the other hand, had quite a normal life as well. So going
Right.
through the teens and 20s, I was fascinated and passionate about the journey of the soul. And I
Yes.
couldn't see where that fit in my life. So I kind of had a bit of the double life going,
Yes.
a bit of the spiritual closet going as well.
Yes.
And so in my spare time, I studied the mysteries and, you know, read
Mm-hmm.
all the books and did all the courses. But then also at the same time, developed a career in creativity. I was a creative director and I loved all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of real world stuff as well. Um,
Yes.
and then it wasn't until like late 20s when I kind of realized, whoa, I'm actually just as qualified in my passion as the other. And it was like two
Yes.
train tracks needed to combine. And so,
Yes.
you know, I think that nothing's ever wasted and what we end up doing always kind of comes together. And I can see
Oh,
now,
definitely.
God, like it really definitely helped me with like, you know, what it's like running a business and
Oh
just
my
like
gosh.
logistics and creativity and stuff.
Yes.
So it all kind of
Yes.
helped and came together. But yeah, it was very much like the natural call to all things soul.
Yes.
But how does that fit into this real world that I'm in? So
Yes.
yeah.
And then that unfoldment continued. And an
Yeah.
interesting fun fact I've noticed, getting to know, so many authors in our genre, all I
Yeah.
think almost all women,
Yeah.
and George Lizos too.
Yeah.
Many of these authors worked in advertising, marketing,
Yeah.
something. And I actually was like shaman on the hill at the time you guys were doing that.
Right.
But I always loved marketing and
Mm.
later did start my own marketing agency
Oh,
for a number of years.
really?
Yeah,
Oh,
so I
interesting.
think we all have it's a way that we can use our creative skills. A lot of times there's graphics involved, and if we're visionary people, it kind of is a way to like function in the normal world.
Right. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
tool to communicate.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah,
is. And to
yeah.
transport people, through
Right.
imagery
Right.
and words.
Right.
Like I could reading parts of your book with the poetry. I mean, I don't know. I would imagine you would be on the copywriting side because your way with words is amazing.
Yeah, I was a copywriter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and
I
I
can
look back and I'm like, oh God,
see
those
it.
creative mentors that I had who were just like so hard on me. It was so good because it toughened me up,
Yeah,
like that real uber sensitive side of me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And that's also, perhaps life, I'm assuming for you as a highly sensitive person,
Mm,
it's quite a world of stimulation when
yeah,
we're tuned into more.
yeah.
And I think going into a creative pursuit, whether it's writing or graphics or whatever, it gives us a little bit of insulation. It does for me, like when
Yeah,
you're in it.
yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, if I look
Mm-hmm.
back now, I'm like, I think that because I can see how sensitive I am, and I know I'm not alone with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it toughened me up a bit, as in it taught
Absolutely.
me how to not take things personally, which is not to say
Oh,
I don't do that now. I definitely do.
I think we all
But
do, but
I
it's
think
a good
I
skill
don't
to
know if
try
I
to
would have
develop.
ever shared my voice if I hadn't have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Have like, has it been easy for you to share your voice, or
It's been
um
a journey.
yeah.
As a child, I had pretty severe learning disabilities,
Mm,
and I was definitely that classic highly sensitive person. Like according to Elaine Aron's amazing work, the HSP work, that 15 to 20% of us have a more sensitive nervous system, essentially. And a lot of the things you talked about, we process things more deeply, we're more
mm,
sensitive to stimulation, all that. So I was that way, and I encountered spirits and elementals a lot outdoors, but I thought everybody was like that. And
mm,
then at one point, I think as I got closer to the preteens, but not quite, I realized that that wasn't the case.
mm,
And I had a really loving family who was pretty accepting, but at the same time, I was like occupied with other things, just like you, growing into the teen years and everything. And I was really fortunate around age 18, 19 to connect with my late medicine teacher,
mhm,
Lori. So I had a teacher, and she trained
mm,
me in her shamanic tradition that was passed, an oral tradition that was passed down to her from teacher
mm,
to student way back. And
mm,
it originated, as far as I understand, as far as we know, in the American Southwest.
mhm,
So I had her as a guide, but at the same time, for a long time, there was a disconnect between my my family and friends and what I was doing. They knew, but there wasn't
mm,
understanding.
mm,
Fast forward now 20 years, and many things that were very fringe back then are
mm,
pretty mainstream now.
mm,
So
mm,
it went from, kind of, also when we're young, I think we're not as sensitive to nuances in communicating in a way that
mm.
would be accepted. So it
Yeah.
probably went from me like, well, da 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 da, spirit
Mm,
guides, to now, like, for example, my dad understanding that my great aunt, which would be his aunt, who was a nurse, who's been on the other side. I didn't know her very well. I may have met her when I was little, but she passed. He even says, like, say hi to great aunt Anna, because he knows she helps me in my
mm.
medical intuitive work. So
Oh, I
a,
love how you
a
describe that. I
bridge.
think it's such a great way of describing it, of like, yeah, like particularly when you are younger. And
Yeah.
it's not even in years, maybe just the different stages of the spiritual journey, which of course, like, never, ever, ever ends. But I think when we
Right.
first awaken, it's like this whole nother world. And
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, when we begin talking about it, it's just like, you can be a bit more pushy, or a bit more like, this
Yeah.
is the way.
Yeah. Or just
Yeah.
not knowing how to, like,
Yeah.
present it. 20 years later
Yeah.
now, I mean, I talk to people of all levels as a medical
Yeah.
intuitive, and sometimes it's explaining some things, so
Mm.
I'm used to doing that. But back then, I was still like living at home,
Yeah.
like a couple years after college while I went to school, and I had like a sheet up in the corner, and my altar was back there. Like,
Like
I mean,
literally a sheet.
yeah, like literally a
Oh,
sheet in the bedroom.
oh, bless.
And my little brother, he's only 5 years younger. I mean, now he's an adult, but
Yeah.
he was still a kid. And he would look in there, and I was working with the Egyptian goddess Nekhebet. And he
Yeah.
would walk around the house and go, Nekhebet, Nekhebet. Because he liked the word.
That is so sweet.
It's less nuanced than,
Yeah.
articulately presenting something to
Yeah.
your parents as
Yeah.
an adult.
Yeah,
kind of.
or just living it and then them
Yeah.
being intrigued just because it's clearly
Yeah.
working for you.
Yeah, now it's a whole different ballgame. So yeah.
Yeah, I
But
would
so
say, there you go.
no, I was just gonna say I could see how the world of advertising and marketing, like the corporate world, it would make you thicken your skin. It
Oh,
would
big
have to,
time.
right? I mean,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
yeah,
think any kind of corporate world
I
does.
think it
And
does.
I think for me, because I think I see creativity and intuition coming from the same place. But then when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to
Me too.
creativity, it feels a little bit less personal than
Yeah,
intuition, but it's still
yeah,
personal. Like compared
it
to
is.
any other within, say, within an industry, like being the creative, coming up with
Yeah,
ideas. I remember presenting, like having to present, say, 100 headlines to get one
I
through,
bet.
and on
Yeah,
pieces of paper
I
like
bet.
this, and my boss like scrunching them up, and then
Oh,
maybe that's okay, that's
I bet.
okay, that's okay. But it really, I'm really glad that he did that, because I never, if I do have to come up with like a book title or something like that, like I won't
Yes.
just come up with one. I'll work it and work it and work
Me
it.
too.
And I
Me
think
too.
that's like, and I think that's definitely something my creative mentors taught me, and my spiritual mentors as well. That
Yes.
like all the ideas and insights and intuition in the world is like just pointless unless you act on them, unless you
Yes.
integrate them and ground them. And I think
Absolutely.
that's like so important, particularly now, like all my work, all I keep on being called to do is like weave the sacred back in, so we're like bringing these two
Yes.
worlds back together. So I think
Yes.
particularly in the West, it's like, like you and I, when like so many others, when we're kind of, we remember, or maybe we never
Yes.
forgot, but most of us are
Yeah.
remembering, and we see this whole world, or we notice the world that we haven't forgotten,
Yes.
and it seems like another world, but it's
Yes.
not another world. It always was.
It's
We're just
simultaneous.
bringing the two back together. So
Absolutely.
yeah, the embodiment and the acting is so important.
Absolutely. And that was one of the challenges for me, growing up and, becoming a successful adult, owning a business and all of that,
Mm,
was learning to be grounded. Because I don't know about you, but I came in with no ground. I mean, I was very psychic, intuitive,
mm,
whatever, but no grounding. So it was really, that's part of what I learned from my medicine teacher, was
mm,
growing roots into the earth and all of the things
mm,
that go with that, and how to put a container around
mm,
infinity. That's
mm,
creativity, right? It's
mm.
putting a little bit of a form and structure, but
Right.
still holding a frequency.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah.
when I look back as well, into, like, if we're to look at like the soul choosing the family and the all of that kind of thing,
Yes.
I think of
Yes.
like
Yes.
the family that I grew up with as well. Like they're very, very, very grounded people. I'm like, oh, I
Aha.
wonder if I had chosen something else, would I have not
Yes.
been able to integrate? Or yeah, it's
Right.
fascinating when you look at that, isn't it?
It is. And they provided some like deeper resonance that
Mm,
you might not have brought in. That's how I would think
mm,
of it.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back after this short break. Hi, it's Lee Mccree. I'm so grateful to be a part of my medical intuitive clients' journeys of healing and evolution. We're all on our own paths to greater health and self-actualization. In a medical intuitive session with me, we connect deeply with your spirit guides and ancestors and dig into the root causes of what's going on in your physical body, emotions, mind, energetic body, and spirit. To learn more about my medical intuitive work, check out the Work With Me page on amyleemccree.com.
And I loved this book, Letters to a Starseed, first of all, is beautiful. There's so much poetry in it. I mean, it's That's why I could tell perhaps you were on the copywriting side, because the writing is incredible. And there's a scene in here where you talk about remembering prior to incarnation, and waves of souls coming in. What would you share some of that with our listeners to help us kind of have some more perspective on the human journey and the journey of humanity as a whole, which has been, you know, historically and continuing to be kind of tumultuous. Yeah.
Well, what I experienced, and this was, I did a regression and also have done like different soul journey work, was I'd always been fascinated with like what happened before we came, and what happened. And I've just had a son 2 years ago, so that's deepened that experience even more, which is incredible.
I bet.
And I was taken to, you know, going back through my life up until my mother's belly, and then before that to the place in between. And there I was shown that like I was given my personal soul mission, as in like, you know, the way I see the personal mission is like at a soul level, why each of us have come to earth now personally. Well, whatever the soul word for that is, because it's not personal.
Dharma or something.
Exactly. And so I saw that, and that was like choice of family and you know, like key destiny moments in the life, which are all decision points. And I had kind of understood that intellectually myself before, so that wasn't so much of a surprise. But there was like really incredible like visuals, and that was the whole reason why I wanted to do the oracle. I've got a card called I Remember in the Starseed Oracle, which is a visualization of that. I'll
beautiful
for our people who are watching on
YouTube. They'll see
on YouTube. And then I was also then taken to this other place, which is my understanding of like, for those of us who've got a double mission, which I would call the collective mission. So that's where the wave comes in. So it's like people or souls who've chosen to be here at a certain moment in time to be part of some kind of collective change, some kind of influence of the outcome. So being like, but it's not like, because I think sometimes for those of us who resonate with the term light worker or things like that, it can be like, I'm here to save the world. We're just a teeny stitch in a larger thing, or a drop of water in that wave. So for those watching, this was the image here of, it was like looking through into this water reflection of this mirage of like seeing the life. But so then taken to someplace else, which just seemed like it was very familiar, but it had no end and no, it was like this, I saw it as like bright white, but it wasn't white, it was like luminous. And I could feel that there were many other souls there, and I couldn't tell if it was like 100 or 100,000, but like loads and loads, and there being a resonance between it, as in like, you know, perhaps we'd done this before and there was this different constellation coming in. And then I was shown the Council of Light coming, which I guess from my understanding felt like the ones that were holding the energy, right? And we were kind of saying, okay, we're in for this. And the particular experience I had, and I'm sure that there's many different waves as well. This was just one of the many waves, but it was for those coming in around now at a big time of change, to use changing forms of communication to usher in a mass awakening. So that was really what I experienced, and but it was like a wave. So and what I also saw was that it really wasn't just like this one led by one person, or it was the many together. But as each of the souls kind of like switched on, which is like, yes, I'm here, I'm going to do it, or I'm going to share my voice, or I'm going to own who I am, or whatever, it could be felt by the many. So,
Absolutely.
so Amy,
I have goosebumps.
you stepping in and finding your teacher, or you move it, like creating that altar behind the sheet and then moving the sheet, and your brother, so all of that could be
All of that.
felt. And and I'm sure you've experienced this, and perhaps others who are listening have as well, where it's like when someone shares a creation or shares their voice, sometimes it's like a seed within us is activated, and you can't quite explain why, but it's like, okay, now it's time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've noticed, it's interesting. I've noticed certain waves or periods of time, especially a couple over the last 5 years or so, where a bunch of that's clicking in for people. Like a couple years ago, I was like, wow, the women in wellness are getting upgraded and activated. Yeah. And actually this month I was seeing it again, where women who, maybe some of those same women were, up leveling again to a higher level, and, reaching more people, I think really with this resonance that you're talking about.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I think also, like, I've seen in like some of the people I mentor, this pattern of like, oh God, I should be on all the time, and oh, they're doing this, I need to be doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I really do see, I wonder if you do, where it is like, it's almost like these groups of different people where it's like, okay, it's your turn now. No, it's your turn now. And then if we try and do it, when it's not our wave, it's like, you're not going to be
work
for yours.
Timing. It's timing, and we all want to like hack divine timing because we're in the human body and we want it more, bigger, better, faster. Right. But sometimes we can't. Sometimes it's just the timing. And I agree. It is those groups sort of like, I almost picture like this pillar goes up and then this one comes up, and this like, and it's a continual elevation that's occurring. Yeah. And community, I think, is so crucial as far as the support. I love that you have a membership. I would imagine that creates some community. I'm working on that on my end because I'm really, especially after the pandemic, seeing how, like, for example, here in the US, there'll be women scattered all over the country who feel isolated because they don't have the, people thinking the same kinds of deep thoughts and wondering about spirituality around them. So I think that that's really crucial, and kind of takes us around to our topic of the rising of the divine feminine and the goddess, and how critical that is for where we are on earth. And there are elements of sisterhood and deep spirituality in that. And I know you teach some of that, so I'd love to hear your take on that as well.
Well, I don't know. Have you been to Glastonbury before?
No, I was wanting to come to Europe in 2020 and do all that. And now I'm going to wait a little bit, but I'd like to. I mean, in Journey, of course. Other lives, oh yeah. But not in this physical body yet.
I think that my deepening to the goddess, the feminine mysteries, and I'd say like the great mother as the earth really happened. The deepening happened when I first visited here, or consciously visited here. Been here once before when I was 18, and that definitely activated something. But yeah, I was ready to begin working on the mother wound, the mother line, sisterhood, and all of that. And this land here really opened up that whole portal for me. When I look back, I first visited the Chalice Wall Gardens, and that's when I connected with the Magdalenes, which is the energy I wrote my second book with, Rise Sister Rise. And and then after coming here and developing a relationship with the land myself. I then began doing sacred retreats and that kind of thing. And then I didn't plan it. Like my husband and I, we'd been both from Australia. We'd been living in London for about 12 years. And we actually met in London. We didn't move over together, but we were considering moving back to Australia. And then at the last minute, we saw a place here and put on an offer, and it was so not part of the plan. And then my son came straight away, but it's just such part of the soul plan. And so
you were in the place
I think
you needed to be.
Yeah, this land has definitely been the mother work for me.
Yes.
So yeah, and I think that it's also been a big part of like properly returning to the earth, you know, like weaving those two worlds back together. And like that, the book Letters to a Starseed, it looks like it's a book about the stars, but it's really about a book about the earth.
Yes, I noticed. Yeah.
And yeah, returning to the mother, because I think that, you know, like many consciously created my life the way that we're all told to, and really that was just making it in a patriarchal world. And then little by little and we're still doing it. I think we'll be doing it for many, many years, just dissecting, maybe decades, maybe lifetimes, dissecting those old ways that are literally starving us from the feminine, severing us from the mother and each other. Yeah. What about
you? It is a remembering of coming back around to how it was before that, which was a lot more matriarchal.
Totally. And I think that's why being here has been such great medicine for me, because it's in this town, it literally is in worship of the goddess, and the wheel of the year is worshipped and celebrated everywhere. And so it's really, to me, like that has been this thing that I've felt starved of my whole life, of like these two worlds being separate, but they shouldn't be. Like, why do we have to go and be spiritual or go and get grounded? Like, surely they're the same thing. And so remembering that and unpicking that and reweaving that.
And as we live it, you know, in our lives, as you know, we're both so fortunate we get to share our you know, words and our ideas. I always felt it since I was a small child that I deal in ideas. I have my brain, I call it the idea factory.
That's amazing.
I suspect you're the same way.
I just haven't spoken to many people who talk like that.
But you know, as we live, you know, the path of the goddess, it seeps through. I was so fortunate to get to write the book A Little Bit of Goddess for Sterling. And it's in French now. Oh, I bumped my little stack. There's some new French translations that are in here.
Congrats.
Yeah. And, you know, as we live that, we can't help but resonate that out through our lives. And I also think it helps us in who we attract into our lives, and according to sisterhood. You know, I have a beautiful community in my town, and we're all involved in dance, you know, which is a creative expression. And it turns out, you know, these can be our modern day goddess temples.
Right.
Basically. And I love that you're bringing women and men too, but people together to connect with the divine feminine in a deeper way, because we're a lot of us are starved for that.
Totally.
And we didn't have the privilege of, like in my case, the medicine teacher who taught me that, and her teacher is still incarnated, interestingly enough. My teacher is on the other side now, but her teacher is still incarnated, and she really initiated me deeply into some of that. And you know, it's in our genetic memory. Somewhere every human on earth has an ancestor who followed the cycles of the seasons, and who probably visited or lived in a temple of the goddess, you know, existed as a priestess or perhaps a druid, and, you know, all of the different geographic areas all over the world when God was a woman.
Thank you.
It's in our genes.
It really is. And yeah, I appreciate you reflecting on the activation and the remembrance through the actions in the body, because I think that I so agree with that. And you know, I've and not professionally, just for my own benefit, you know, when you run a business, it's hard not to be like, oh, and now I need to turn this into something.
Oh, I know.
But
Same.
What lights me up more than anything is connecting with nature, working with flowers and plants and herbs and all of that. And so I've been studying herbalism, not to become a herbalist, just to make my own magic.
Yes.
And you know, part of what I've been doing with it started at first with working with nettle, for example.
Yes,
and
nettle.
I began ordering it online and then ordering it from the shop just up the road, and then going, oh my gosh, it is growing through the cracks of my pavement. Like,
in your climate,
it's a weed, but it's
everywhere.
It's everywhere. And so, whoa, reframe.
Yeah.
And then through foraging it as well, what I've noticed is through the action of like bending down and picking the leaves, it's as if there's some cellular memory within me of all my ancestors who'd done that. And that's so simple. It's so simple.
It's so simple.
And I think
it brings us back around to what's already within us.
Right. And yeah, like all of those like more home-based practices where, you know, more of us are knitting now, more of us are weaving, or we're cooking, baking bread, whatever. I think all of that is part of that remembering.
I do too.
And yeah, doing those actions that have no attachment to the outcome, I think is so important.
Which is rare nowadays.
Really rare.
You know, in the go society, especially with, you know, smartphones and devices, and, you know, turning us all into junkies, essentially, including myself. You know, it's rarer and more. It's more and more rare that we slow down and do one thing at a time with no electricity involved, except maybe cooking. You know what I mean?
Right.
A non-technological, contemplative, creative, mundane activity.
Right.
I mean, if anything, if you think about all the modern convenience, it's amazing. It gives us time to run a business. If we were growing our own food and making clothes and yarn and all of the pioneer type stuff, we wouldn't really have time to do what we're doing.
Right.
But at the same time, if we're like ordering all of our food out and doing, you know, everything, all the mundane is taken care of, does it give us time to push forward career-wise and perhaps engage in other creative endeavors? Yes. But the grounding of coming back full circle. Your ancestors picked nettle out of the ground. And it also, I think, incites a reverence for life, to meet the plant, to say to the plant, may I make you into a tea? Right. And the plant saying yes, you know, whether it's like that deliberate or whatever, to connect with the life force of another being. That does not happen with a computer.
Right. And there's no wonder that we feel disconnected.
Yeah. So bringing it all back around. Absolutely. What a great chat. I feel like we could talk for another hour.
Me too.
Yes, we'll have to have you come back on, and we can
That'd be lovely.
Explore these topics and more. If you could leave our listeners with a message, let's call it like a message from the elders or the goddess, the other side, like, what do you think that would be? What do you think a spiritual benevolent presence would want to tell our listeners?
I would say it's like about reaching back through your ancestral line to the ones who did not forget.
And feeling, you know, I will even add to that, feeling the spirits of those beings around you.
Right.
And that resonance is contained in your physicality. Within every cell of your body contains a chromosome, which contains, you know, strands of DNA, which contain your genes.
Right.
And this is, you can feel an external resonance from those spirits and an internal resonance in your being. And perhaps there's support we can find there.
Absolutely.
I love that message. Thank you so much for being here, Rebecca.
Thanks, Amy.
Where can our listeners find you?
My website is rebeccacampbell.me, and on Instagram I'm rebeccacampbell_author.
Aha. Yeah, it's kind of a common name. I bet you couldn't get the original at Rebecca Campbell.
Exactly.
I'm sure you were close. Like, you're probably on top of it sooner than a lot, but some Rebecca Campbell out there, you
and a lot of Rebecca Campbells.
You got it, sister. Oh, it's such a joy to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to Happily Holistic. And we wish you a joyful day.
Thanks for listening to Happily Holistic with me, Amy Lee Mccree. You can find out more about the show on amyleemccree.com on the podcast page. Please stop by your favorite social platform and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear how you liked today's show and what topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Come find me on Instagram and Facebook at amyleemccree.com. If you would like to see what a medical intuitive session with me is all about, hop on over to the Work With Me page on amyleemccree.com. Until next time, stay happily holistic.